This is the EFSF Prototype Multi-Purpose Mobile Suit RX-78GP01Fb. Gundam GP01 Zephyranthus Full Burnern. Making its debut in 1991's Mobile Suit Gundam 0083:Stardust Memory, it is an overhauled version of the Gundam Zephyranthus, which was heavily damaged while defending the Albion from an attack by Cimagarahu's Marine Corps, the Cima Fleet, apparently. The Gundam was recovered and sent to Anaheim Electronics to undergo a massive upgrade in order to become the RX-78GP01Fb Gundam Zephyranthus Full Burnern, and what it became, despite having a name that reads like a line item on a credit card statement, is unapologetically amazing. Think of it like taking a paddle boat and sticking a couple jet engines on the back, then removing the paddle boat bits and replacing them with your dad's station wagon. Basically, you're left with a machine that's really good at doing two things, but can only do them one at a time. See, the Full Burnern can work both in space and on Earth, but needs to undergo a change of core fighters, which is basically the cockpit, before working in either environment. So, if you want to beat the machine, all you really have to do is break the atmosphere of the nearest planet you happen to be around at any given time. How hard can that be? Speaking of things that are both fast and good... This is a Lancia Delta, and a very special one. With Yuha Kankunen and several others behind the wheel, this Lancia and its crew won the FIA World Rally Championship's manufacturer's title a staggering 6 straight years, with Kankunen picking up his second straight driver's championship title also in 1991. As you can clearly see from Kankunen's driving being significantly better than anything I can do, the early 90s were a great time for fast and overall good machinery, not to mention some of the best racing rivalry ever devised. Martini, which is a name that's become synonymous with the liquor cabinet of the teacher you had a crush on when you were 15, is a vermouth distillery in Turin, which is in Italy. Martini has sponsored racing cars since 1968. Well, technically they started paying for sponsorship in 1962, but you didn't really see it on the cars for another 6 years, which kind of defeats the purpose of advertising in the first place. But when you did start seeing it, the rivalry was and still is one of the most recognizable in racing. From Formula 1 to rallying to Le Mans, even if the teams aren't at their most successful, the tri-tone pinstripe design has become an icon that has stood for 5 decades. Now, what does all of this have to do with Gunpla? Well, the spring motorsports season is in full swing with the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series, NASCAR Xfinity Series, Lucas Oil Sprint Car Series, Monster Energy Supercross, Lucas Oil Modified Series, Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series, Horizon IndyCar Series, MotoGP, AMSOIL Arena Cross, IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship, FIA World Rally Championship, Formula 1 Superbike World Championship, FIA World Endurance Championship, FIA World Rallycross, Stadium Super Trucks, Moto America, Pirelli World Challenge, Monster Jam, and FIM Motocross, all taking part as of this video being posted. So now is, I think, the best time of the year to pay tribute to these go-fast machines. And since, as the saying goes, Gunpla is freedom, I am free to do this by applying the most legendary racing rivalry in motorsport to a scale model of an impossible war machine. Let's get started. So first and foremost, we need the tools that we're going to be using on the build, first being our snips and our hobby knife. In addition, we're going to be doing a fair amount of panel lining, so we'll need our technical pens, and of course, the model itself. All 10 runners of it. And there we are. We've got our tools, we've got our kit, and it's time to start the build! All 8.5 hours of it, while playoff hockey drones on in the background. Okay, I don't know about you, but this is going to start getting boring very, very quickly. So why don't we speed this up here? Let's say about 3 minutes or so, shall we? That's more like it. Just about done with the core fighter here. The big jets on the back end. We're getting started now with the legs. Very posable, just like every other real grade kit. With one major difference, gigantic clown shoes. Now notice what I do here with my panel lining. A lot of people, when they first try panel lining, end up getting very streaky results. What I do is I flood the grooves with way too much ink and wipe it away with either a kneaded eraser or just my finger. Now we work on the second leg. Pretty much the same as the last one, including the gigantic clown shoes. Lots of very, very tiny pieces with these, as real grades tend to have. Really, really tiny pieces that will get lost in the lowest pile carpeting. But you will find them usually about 3 in the morning when you're trudging out to the kitchen in order to get a late night beverage. What we're working on here is the torso, more specifically the waist itself, which then the legs connect to just like every other kit ever made. Now for the chest piece, and this was probably the most difficult part of the build, as you're seeing here. Even in time-lapse, it takes a while for me to get those barn doors on the front that end up covering the core fighter closed properly. So much so that I need to do it a couple times. And I'm still fussing with it. That is at 22,000% speed, folks. Now we're on to the arms themselves. Much easier to do the arms than the chest piece, for sure. Some more flooded panel lining here. Towards the end of the video, you should see plenty of glamour shots of that for sure. Finishing up the second arm here. Much like the first one. Now for the tiniest little thrusters you will ever see for the shoulder pads. And we've got our chest piece finished with the arms ready to go. And what you're seeing here is the most famous part of any Gunpla kit, the head. Once that's finished, we Voltron all the pieces together, and there we are. Our completed model kit. Now that we've completed our model of the Gundam GP01Fb EFSF prototype multi-purpose mobile suit Gundam Zephyranthus full Burnern, it's time to apply the custom Martini Livery waterslide decals. Unfortunately, since I had actually never done this before doing this video, the application process is on a geological timescale. And since this video is already getting a bit long in the tooth, let's skip ahead to what you actually want to see. And here it is. Completed, posed, and a shining example of the continued evolution of Gundam design in the early 90s. And to boot, a legendary set of racing stripes and sponsorship with appropriate levels of post-action wear. A total of 8.5 hours of work between building and panel lining and decaling, and a worthy addition to any growing collection. At this point, you're probably expecting me to wax poetic about how much fun it was to build, and how smooth the posing was, and how it's one of my favorite kits, or whatever flashy expressions other, more experienced content creators might have in their back pocket. But no. It wasn't that. It wasn't even close to that. Although the build was pretty straightforward and no more confusing than any other real grade usually is, the thing is about as easy to pose as a weeping angel. As soon as you look away from this thing, it will be in a different place, likely plotting several ways to kill you. The shield, for example, refuses to stay connected to the forearm. I ended up breaking the nozzle of the rifle off while trying some base-free poses, but by far, the most frustrating part of this kit is the part that's been most notably on the Atkins in more recent series. the chest piece, where the arms are connected to, connects in the most general use of the word, not to the waist like a normal suit would, but instead to the core fighter, which then connects to the waist. Kind of. Because this makes the torso far more complex, not to mention off balance with more than half of the core fighter hanging off of its back, any flexing of the torso can lead to the entire chest piece popping off. Once you have that balancing act figured out, you then have to figure out how to keep the rest of the suit on balance, which to its credit is helped by the suit's huge clown shoes. With an action base, though, a lot of these gripes about balance can be alleviated, but don't expect to be able to change the pose you select all that often without wanting to tear your hair out. All of this, though, can be managed with experience. Every suit has its quirks. My biggest gripe, however, with this suit is of my own doing, and that's the livery. At the end of the day, my concept could have been much, much better. I wanted to combine two things that I really like to make something unique, but instead, to my eye, the decals are not as noticeable as I wanted them to be, and could only be used sparingly because the water slides I used don't really like curves. At all. Because of this, the effect in some places looks almost incomplete to me. So why am I spending so much time on a suit that overall I don't like? Because it's important to learn from your experience. But even more important than that is to never let your imperfect kits discourage you. Next time I do a kit with custom water slides, I know what works and what doesn't. The next time I decide to do a relatively older real grade kit, I'll know to have a few cups of chamomile tea to calm my nerves ahead of time. Your mistakes are how you learn, and you'll always improve as long as you continue to build bad gunpla. See you next time.